Hello and welcome to another CSD Fantasy YouTube video featuring the Green Bay Packers. Next Friday is a holiday here in Sweden, so next week there will be a shorter video, but for now, let's dig in. Looking at the Packers opportunity pool, they face the NFC North, South, AFC North, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks. These teams have, from analyzing their plays from the last 2 years, given up 565 pass plays and 405 runs. Looking at the Packers' last 3 years, we see that they have passed the ball on average 574 times and rushed it 415. Combining these provide us with 569 dropbacks and 410 runs to divide amongst the players. That is the total opportunity pool. Starting off by looking at the target share, we see a good amount of targets for the two top wide receivers, while the running backs tend to see fewer targets than the league average, and the same goes for the tight end. For the running backs, the number one guy has not received over 50% of the carries for a while. Compare that to David Johnson's 69%, and you see a big disparity from team to team. For the king in the north, Aaron Rodgers, we take the dropbacks from the opportunity pool and look at his passing trends. The most interesting thing I take away from his trends is that he shies away from throwing over the middle, which can impact Martellus Bennett, but more on him in his own video that you can find a link to below. I project Rodgers to get sacked 42 times and lose 284 yards from that and throw 7 interceptions. His total projection is 39 passing touchdowns and run for 2 and land at a total of 351.3 fantasy points. For now, I have Montgomery as the Packers' #1 running back. I'm not sure he will be that come season start, but when looking at his rushing, we see that he does not stay on the field during 3rd and 4th down for rushing. Also, his yards per carry gets cut in half after 1st down. That is not too alarming considering he has incredible yards per reception in 3rd and 4th down, but since he doesn't stay on the field that much in the 3rd one, it's hard to make any conclusions about this. I project him to have a decent fantasy year as their #1 back and get almost 50 targets. My total projection for him nets him a total of 173.9 fantasy points. Most of that coming from rushing, half of it coming from touchdowns, and receiving being the low with 29.5 points. Now let's look at Jordy Nelson. Comparing Nelson's receiving trends with Rodgers' passing, we can see that they line up pretty well, except the deep right where Rodgers could throw a few more considering that Nelson likes that zone. For his productivity, I project him to gain roughly 100 to 200 yards from each zone during the course of the season, with the short right as an outlier with 349 yards. Looking at the targets, I have projected 144 for Nelson next year, and with his own receiving trends catching 92 of those, and when adjusting for Rodgers catching 91, that is extremely good parity. He will have a good year with touchdowns and catch 13 of them for 78 fantasy points, while gaining over 1,000 yards for a total of 197 fantasy points. As long as he can stay healthy, Vanilla Thunder will produce. With Davante Adams, it feels like you don't know who will show up. I have him as the Packers' second receiver. I guess he had sort of his breakout year last season when he doubled his fantasy points per game from his previous 2 years. I project him to lose 6 targets compared to last year and 8 less receptions. He really outplayed his numbers last season, but 67 receptions from his own receiving friends and 67 while adjusting for Rodgers shows that they throw to him almost the exact amount of throws he should get considering his own production. I project him to have 763 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns next year and land at a total of 118.3 fantasy points. As the third wide receiver, I have Randall Cobb. He has steadily been in a downward spiral over the last 2 years, and I have him continuing this trend in 2017. I project his fantasy points per game to drop another point compared to last year and land at 5.8. For his targets and receptions, I project him to get 80 passes thrown to him, while catching 54 from his own receiving trends and 52 when adjusting for Rodgers, so almost a 1-to-1 ratio for him too. With these receptions, I have him gaining 618 yards and 5 touchdowns next year. His total fantasy projection will be 91.8. Looking at their 2017 projections in the light of last year, Rodgers will still have been the number 1 fantasy quarterback, so no big change there. Montgomery would have had a really good year if he played as their running back number 1, something to keep in mind for next year. Jordy Nelson would still have been a top 5 receiver, but not the number 1. He's still a very good option, even though he's getting older. Davante Adams had an amazing 2016, so I'm not surprised his projection is taking a hit. I don't trust him going forward. Randall Cobb, as I said before, has had a hard time the last 2 years, and the numbers suggest he will continue. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Visit csdfantasy.com for more fantasy numbers, and as always, the spreadsheets are dark and full of terror.